Just heard Patricia speak. Was there anything in particular that really stood out to you the most? Something very specific from her talk?
To be honest, everything stood out a lot. There's nothing just specific. It's just everything. Towards the end, when she talked about, just she has nothing left. She hit bare bottom, and she speaks to God and talks to God, and just him opening his arms up and saying, you know what, I forgive you. You can come to me. I'm here for you. Was extremely powerful.
You just heard Patricia Sandoval speak. What were your first initial reactions to her testimony?
It makes me just realize that as a woman, I am called to stand for pro-life and to stand for the unborn, because they don't have a voice. Those are children that a lot of people don't realize that they're human.
What about the Transfigured book?
It was an amazing story, uplifting, encouraging, and just as a mother of three, that gave me a lot of hope about, Transfigure and God being relentless to change someone. And as a mother, that our prayers are never in vain.
Okay, very cool.
Our next speaker, Patricia Sandoval, we are blessed to have with us. She is the subject of her autobiographical book called Transfigured, which is the story of her escape from drugs, homelessness, and the back door of Planned Parenthood. She is a full-time international pro-life speaker speaking on chastity, God's mercy, his healing, and his gift of life. Please welcome Patricia Sandoval.
Thank you so much. My story is a very hard story to tell. It's not easy. It's still a little bit hurtful, but I do it because I love the Lord. And the Bible says, our Lord says, that there's no greater love than to give your life for a friend. The unborn do not have many friends. They actually have many enemies. And I decided years ago to be their friend and to be their voice. My story begins when I was a child, and in my family, I felt very loved. I felt united with my family, and I was baptized. And I remember when I was very young, I used to go into my backyard, and I used to write love letters to God the Father. And I used to roll them up, tie them on balloons, and I used to send them up to heaven. And I used to speak to God, and I used to look up at the sky, and I felt like I had a relationship with him. But as the years went by, my mother started getting involved in the New Age practices. We got into pretty heavy stuff. My mom would teach us how to line up our chakras and awaken the serpent inside of us when I was about 10 years old. We would go to big convention centers where they would hypnotize everybody in the crowds. We would go to fairs, like basically big events, where there would be witches at every table, and some would read your past lives. And I was like 10, 11 years old, and these were the type of things that we were involved with. And eventually the family just started falling apart, and my parents divorced. But when I was 12 years old, I remember that Planned Parenthood came into my school. I asked my mother, I said, Mom, is it okay if you sign this permission slip, because we're gonna have a course on sexuality, and Planned Parenthood is coming to my school tomorrow, and she thought it was great. And I remember that morning when we got into class, on our desk, there was bananas and condoms. And they said, okay, kids, 90% of people do not know how to apply a condom properly, so we're gonna show you guys how to properly apply a condom on these bananas. And I'd never thought of the man's genital parts. I've never even thought about sex. And they started teaching us all these things, and they talked about birth control. Okay, birth control prevents STDs, and birth control prevents pregnancies. And they made safe sex sound like it was amazing, like it protected you, like it was the solution. And they talked about protecting your genital area, but they never talked about protecting your heart. They never talked about love or purity. I didn't even know what purity was. I didn't know that my virginity was a treasure. I didn't hear from it from my parents. I didn't know that I was supposed to wait until I arrived at the altar. I had no idea about these things. And I remember that they talked about masturbation, and they said, you know, children, we actually recommend masturbation because it's healthy. It takes away anxiety. It gives you emotional balance, and we prefer that you guys start masturbating now because we don't want you guys to have sex with different types of partners. And they perverted our minds. But I thought that this was truth. I thought that their teachings was truth. And I remember when I walked out of that course, I thought, wow, okay, so the day that I lose my virginity, the only thing I have to practice is safe sex, and I've got it made. Sounds so easy. And things were really bad at home. My parents divorced, and my mother moved to Mexico, and I stayed with my father in the US, in California. When I was 19 years old, I walked into a nightclub, and I saw this man that was 25 years old, and I thought, he's mine, that's mine. And we started dating. When my boyfriend and I started having sex, we practiced safe sex with a condom. 6 months into it, we had a little accident. And one day I felt very nauseous, and I took a pregnancy test at home, and one of my cousins was with me. And when I saw that test, positive, fear entered my heart. And I said, oh my gosh. And I was so scared. And when I called my boyfriend that evening, he said, I'm so happy. I'm going to protect you. Don't worry, I am with you. We will get through this. And as a woman, to hear a man say, I will protect you. I am with you. Do not worry. I'm supporting you. And I felt so loved. And all that fear came out of my heart. We went to our first appointment with our doctor together for the first ultrasound. And I remember on that screen, I saw a head. I saw arms that were moving. And I saw heartbeat. I saw this heart just pounding out of the chest. And I heard the heartbeat. And I saw life forming. And I was so happy. And my boyfriend was crying of joy. But 4 months into my pregnancy, my friends came over, and what they said to me was, Patricia, what are you doing? This is the worst mistake. You're not ready to be a mom. Just make an appointment and just have an abortion and start all over. Just start all over. And I said, okay, no, they're right. I'm gonna go get an abortion, but I can't tell my boyfriend the truth. You know, he's Mexican. In Mexico, they don't have abortions. They don't believe in that. That's what I thought. And I'm just gonna tell him I had a miscarriage, and then this nightmare, it turned into a nightmare, it's gonna be over. I remember they put me on the exam table and I was shaking because they don't give you pre-instructions. They don't tell you what you're gonna go through until you get there. So I was sitting on the exam table and the doctor walks in. And I remember she was a beautiful lady, you know, very sophisticated. And I was shaking and she said, oh my goodness, Patricia, you're shaking? No, don't get nervous. Look, this takes 5 minutes. And I've had an abortion myself. And last year, I performed 2 abortions on my daughter. My daughter's okay, I'm okay, and you're gonna be okay. It's just 5 minutes. So I thought, oh, okay, well, she looks good, and her daughter's okay, and I work in the medical field. You know, doctors don't lie. The only thing I remember was the vacuum sound and something being sucked out of my womb, and I felt this big emptiness inside of me. But at the same time, I thought, oh, okay, I don't have this problem anymore. But after that, things were getting worse. I started having nightmares of babies crying. I started yanking my hair out more. I started getting a lot of anxiety, and my boyfriend's like, what's wrong with you? Like, you're very irritable, you're always mad, and then you're always crying. Your emotional state is really, like, off track. And then he started getting super depressed. And he would tell me, you know what, Patricia, I'm having these horrible nightmares of a little girl saying, Daddy, Daddy. And then I start feeling guilty. And I say, it was not a baby, it was a pregnancy. He was suffering post-abortion syndrome, and he didn't even know he had an abortion. I said, okay, the condom didn't work. I'm gonna start taking birth control pills. So I take my little pill at the same time every day. And all of a sudden, 6 months later, I started feeling nauseous again. I didn't feel good. I thought, oh no, what's going on? So I took another pregnancy test, positive right away. I thought, wait a minute, how? If I'm being responsible, I'm practicing safe sex. How is safe sex failing twice? I'm taking my pill every day at the same time. I thought, okay, it's only a month into it. It's literally nothing. It's a sac of tissue. And I thought, okay, I did it once. This is gonna be easier. I can do it again. And this time I went to Planned Parenthood. I thought, wait, I can't go to the same clinic. I just had an abortion. They told me to practice safe sex. They're gonna think I'm really irresponsible. And when I went to Planned Parenthood for the second time, the only thing I remember is sitting on the exam table, going, okay, I'm gonna block myself again. I'm gonna do this again, this is gonna be easy. And when I heard the vacuum sound, I started hearing someone applaud me like this. And I opened my eyes, and the doctor started applauding me. She said, wow, Patricia, this is amazing. You are the best patient I've ever had during an abortion. You're like the first woman that's not even crying. You're not even kicking. Your legs aren't even moving. You're making my job easy. A lot of women faint, and they make drama. You are the number one brave woman that I've ever seen during an abortion. When I walked out again with another bag of free condoms, free birth control pills, so I can continue practicing safe sex that failed twice. And then things got worse. I wanted to kill myself. I felt so empty inside. And I just kept practicing, safe sex, but it was miserable. And I thought that I was supposed to do that because we were girlfriend and boyfriend, and it's just normal that, boyfriend and girlfriends have sex. And for the third time, I got pregnant, 6 months after the second abortion. And so they give these youth the worst contraceptives with the low dose concentration and the worst condoms, and I fell into that trap. I didn't want to feel guilty anymore. I said, I'm going to tell him the truth. And I'm going to force him to go with me to this abortion because I don't want to be the only bad person in this movie, right? So I call him and I said, guess what? And he said, what? I said, I'm pregnant again. And he started getting happy. Oh, I want to be a father, Patricia. I'm so happy. I said, no, it's not the time. No, you're not going to be a father. I'm not going to be a mother. I don't want to be pregnant. I'm going to go get an abortion. And when he told me, but I don't want to have an abortion. Oh, it's like this lion came out inside of me. And I said, it is my body and my choice. You have nothing to do with the choices I make over my body. I don't care what you think. And you know what? You're a selfish person because I'm going to lose my family. I'm going to lose my job and my career, my dreams and my goal. Your parents won't stop talking to you. You're a guy. I'm going to lose everything. My life is going to end. Don't you care about me? It was all about me. I said, if you want to come with me or not, I don't care. I'm going to go have an abortion tomorrow morning. And I think he was scared that I was going to leave him because he really loved me a lot. So he went with me to this abortion. And what I remember is laying on that exam table, and they turned on that vacuum sound. And I felt his hand squeeze me so hard. And when I opened my eyes to look at his reaction, his lip was jumping because he was so frightened. And I looked into his eyes, and it was terror in his eyes. And during that abortion, the only thing that I could feel were the tears that were his tears dropping down my face and just running down my neck because he was so affected by this abortion. He was crying in pain. He didn't want to. I took the right away from him to become a father. Unfortunately, the unborn do not have a voice. But men today do not have a voice over their fatherhood and over their children. Men don't have a voice as well. And I waited about a week or two, and I left him, and he was so heartbroken. And that's when I moved to Sacramento, here nearby, Sacramento, California, and I needed a job. So I saw an ad in the newspaper. Planned Parenthood is desperately seeking a bilingual medical assistant. And when I went to this interview, they gave me the job with no experience. They wanted somebody desperately that spoke Spanish. The first day I went in there, I was hired on the spot. I remember the manager took me into her office and she said, okay, Patricia, we do 50 abortions, and this, I'm talking about 1999, 50 abortions a week. We do 25 on Wednesdays and 25 on Fridays. 90% of the women are Hispanic, non-speaking English women. In Latin America and Mexico, Mexicans don't do that. because that's where my, and she said, no, of course they do. It's the women that most abort in California are Hispanic women. And I was shocked. She said, that's why we desperately need somebody like you. So you're very pro-choice. I said, oh yeah. Actually, I've had 3 abortions myself. I believe the woman can do whatever she wants with her body. Oh, that's awesome, because those 3 abortions are going to help us encourage women to have abortions. So today you're going to counsel these 50 women to come in, because they're going to come in on Wednesday and Friday. And if they don't come in for their abortions, you can actually lose your job. There is no other solution here but abortion. So you're going to do everything in your will that they never miss their appointment. Another thing, you cannot bring photographs of your family, of your nephews and nieces and cousins here, because if a woman walks in and she sees a photograph of a family, she might freak out and walk out, and that's going to be your fault. You never look at a woman in the eyes. You can't have a relationship with a patient, because the woman walks in and she's crying and she's really scared. So she's waiting for somebody to say, are you okay? Are you scared? There's other solutions. You don't have to have an abortion. There's other options. No, there's no other options. It's abortion. And I was a little confused. And she said, you can't use the word baby, he, she, mother, or father. It, sack of tissue. You can't even use the word fetus in this place. I was still a little confused, and I remember all day, 50 women I counseled, mostly in Spanish. Every single woman, the same thing, like a broken record over and over. Patricia, my baby's gonna feel it, right? It's gonna hurt my baby. And it's like kind of like in the pit of your soul, they knew it was a baby somehow. And I said, of course it's not a baby. It's not gonna hurt. It's not a baby. It's not gonna hurt it because it's a sack of tissue. This is the best choice you can make. And I actually thought I was doing an act of charity, doing something great for the youth. Because I thought Planned Parenthood were heroes. I thought they were always there for me. They always gave me free contraceptive. They always called my house and never said it was them. They lied to my dad. They always mailed me my results, and they never put their Planned Parenthood stamp on it. They always put a fake name. I thought they were woohoo for me, and I wanted to help. Then Wednesday came along, and when I walked in, I remember the manager was like a crazy woman looking for me, like, where's Patricia, before the day started. She grabs my hand. She was the rudest lady I've ever seen in my life. She puts me into her office, and she closes the door. She goes, okay, so today is the day. We have a doctor not from this office. He's an abortionist that just jumps around the country in abortion clinics. Because you know why? Because if a woman has a complication after her abortion and tries to sue us, the doctor's not from our clinic. We don't have problems. So he just kind of jumped around. And today you're going to assist him, and you're going to assist the women and the young girls that have the abortions. So the abortions can only last 5 minutes. So you're literally going to be jumping from one room to the next room, to the next room, to the next room. Because if we waste any more time than 5 minutes, we lose money. Do you understand? And I said, yes. And she said, okay. So the most important thing here is that when we do the ultrasounds before their abortions, you never, ever let the woman see the screen. If she wants to see that ultrasound, that screen has to face the doctor, never the patient. I don't care if she cries, I don't care if she's screaming, never sees that ultrasound. And after each abortion, you never tell the mother, said mother, or the father that's in the waiting room that after their abortion, we throw their babies away in the garbage. And when she said those words, she said it so bluntly, without heart, I felt something pierce my heart. I felt something awful, but I didn't want to say anything. I wanted to act strong. I wanted to act like it didn't affect me because I was so pro-choice. And I had had 3 abortions. And I remember the first young girl, she was about 15 years old, she walked in. And I remember this young girl started to faint in my arms, and she was sweating, but I didn't want to look at her eyes. And I thought, oh my gosh, this girl's fainting. She's such a coward. She's fainting over a sack of tissue, And I thought, I was a brave person. I didn't act like this. I wasn't, I didn't do any drama. And I was kind of irritated with her. And I remember I put her on the exam table, and then the doctor walks in, and I remember he didn't even say hi to her. He didn't say anything. He was a rude man. He was a very tall, strong, rude doctor. And he walked in, and he said, Patricia, we're starting the abortion. So I need you next to me. And I remember he took out all the instruments. And when I saw the instruments, I blocked myself out during my abortions. I didn't want to see anything. And I saw all these instruments that were sharp. And I thought, oh my goodness. And I'm just going to warn everybody. This part's a little strong. But it's very necessary to hear this. A lot of people don't tolerate it. But I ask you, for the sake of the unborn, and for the sake of these martyrs, that we listen to their martyrdom. It's so necessary because this is happening to our generation. This is happening now, and it's even worse now than back in 1999. So I remember he took out this needle, the anesthesia. It was this long. It was like the size of from my elbow to my middle finger. It was very long. And he said, all right, Patricia, this is the anesthesia, so I'm going to inject her inside of her womb 7 times because we're going to make the womb numb. So he's injected her 7 times inside of the womb. And I remember standing there going, oh my goodness, this is horrible. This looks horrifying. And he injected her 7 times. Then he turned on the vacuum machine, the abortion machine, 28 times stronger than a regular vacuum that you use at home. It's very powerful. And he takes out the cannula, which is the tip of that machine, and the tip of it is like a sharp knife. And he goes inside of this 15-year-old womb. And when I'm standing behind his shoulder, she starts screaming like crazy, my baby, and her legs are flying. And he's got this sharp object as she's kicking in the air inside of her womb going like this for 5 minutes. That point, I thought to myself, wait a minute. He can't see inside of her womb, and she's kicking, and he's got a knife inside of her womb, and this is a blind man's surgery. And I said, how does he know he's getting everything out, all the cells out? How does he know he's not hurting her ovaries? Or, how does he know what he's doing inside? It actually looked so violent, it looked like he was raping her. But it is a form of rape. It is violent. So when he looked at the clock, he said, okay, it's 5 minutes. And there's this cylinder attached to the machine with some amount of blood that he took out of her womb. He said, okay, I think we have enough blood out. I think we have enough blood. Okay, it's 5 minutes. I think I'm done. I think. You got it? It's a guessing game. I think. So he turns the machine off, and he says, Patricia, grab the bag from the machine. So he opens the cylinder, and all the content, like everything, just dumped into that bag. And I grabbed that bag, and there was a nurse waiting for me at the door. And the nurse said, come with me. So she takes me down the halls of Planned Parenthood and puts me inside of this little room. And she said, close the door now. And I said, why? And she said, because the bathroom is right there, which it shouldn't be. We're going to change that. The bathroom is right there. And if that young girl gets up, and if she goes to the bathroom and she sees what we're about to see right now, then we're in big problem. We have big problems here. So after every abortion, this door's closed. So we close the door, and there's this huge Petri dish. And she said, I want you to dump that bag into the Petri dish. And I thought, oh, okay, we're going to look for this bag of cells, right? That's what we're going to look for right now. Because I just counseled this girl 2 days ago, and I told her it was a sack of tissue. When I emptied this bag out, the smell of death was so strong, it affected me. And I looked at her, and I thought, I'm about to faint. Is she about to faint? And I look at her, zombie, robot. These people working in the clinics are affected by abortion. And all of a sudden, she takes out forceps, like they're like little tweezers, and she starts digging into this Petri dish. And all of a sudden, to my surprise, she takes out a little arm with a hand like this. And she said, This is part number 1. And it was as if time stopped. Time stopped. And I can contemplate that hand. And the first thing I noticed were the fingerprints on those little fingers. And I thought, fingerprints, they identify us as unique, authentic human beings. There's nobody else like you in this world. And then I started seeing the little lines on the palm, and when she turned that little hand around, the fingernails were formed. And this girl was 3 months pregnant, and she threw it in the garbage. And then she dug around again, and then she lifted up to the light a leg. And when I saw that little foot, it had the little prints on the bottom, the little toenails. And what really hit me, what hit home, were that the skin had little hairs growing on it. And she said, this is part number 2. She found the second arm, the second leg, but what really pierced my heart was the head. It had hair, eyebrows, nose, eyes, ears. I even saw little lash coming out, lashes. But the mouth was open, as if this baby tried to fight for his life. It tried to scream, but nobody can hear him because he did not have a voice, and he couldn't save himself, and he didn't make it. And it was from his own mother in her own womb. And that's where I saw my reality, and I said, wait, I didn't abort 3 sack of tissues. I aborted 3 of my own children. And it hurt, but I was such a coward, and I tried to act strong because I was pro-choice, and I didn't say anything. And the whole day in that clinic, it was a holocaust. It was me jumping from one room to the next, the next, and the next. The vacuum sound, all day, abortion. It was a human factory of human beings being killed. The girl would go in, she'd have an abortion, head, arms, feet in the garbage, money. Another girl would go in, abortion, head, feet, garbage, money, all day, in a circle. It was a money-making, demonic, satanic place. At the end of the day, there's about 25 babies in pieces in a garbage can, in a biohazard bag. And I said to the nurse, what do we do with this bag? And she said, oh, with that garbage? Oh, okay, so in California, we can't just dump out that garbage because there's blood in there. And you know, the garbage in the garbage cans in the back of the clinic, because can you imagine these women that walk out of this clinic and have abortions, they open that garbage can and they just see all these dead babies? Of course not. So there's a huge freezer right there. And biohazard comes in monthly, and they just kind of throw it out in the dumpsters. So just tie the bag up and put the date on it and just store it right there. And when I open that freezer up, because these bags are red, but they're clear, I open this freezer and I see these blocks of babies frozen from all the abortions that Planned Parenthood had just in that one clinic. And it was horrifying to work in that place. I would cry every single day. I worked about a month in that place, and every day I suffer, and I'd see these people go, are these people not suffering? What's wrong with these people? They're affected, they're numb. The last day that I worked at Planned Parenthood, I walked in and there was this young girl, and her stomach was this big. And it was the first time I've ever seen the manager at Planned Parenthood so happy, the biggest smile on her face. She said, oh, hi, Patricia, good morning. You will be assisting the 16-year-old girl with her abortion after your lunch. She is 6 months pregnant with twins. And when I saw this girl look at me with a smile, say, nice to meet you, I thought to myself, you have no idea what you're about to do. I could not see 2 siblings in a petri dish in pieces. I felt like I was gonna faint. I couldn't. And I ran out of Planned Parenthood and I never went back. So I was suffering post-abortion syndrome from my 3 abortions. Now can you imagine this bigger trauma on top of that? working at Planned Parenthood, helping other mothers have an abortion, how my soul was. And I was lost after that. I started getting heavily into drugs. I met this young man that was just involved in drugs, and I told him that I was just depressed. I never told him about my abortions. I never told anybody about working at Planned Parenthood. And he introduced me to cocaine because he told me that helped him heal his heart. And I started using cocaine, and it temporarily helped me. And I used so much cocaine that my nose would start to bleed. And he said, Patricia, your nose is damaged. How about trying methamphetamine? I'll teach you how to smoke it. So I started grabbing a crack pipe, and I started smoking methamphetamine. And that would help me forget about my parents and my mom. And it would help me forget about how I was just trash. And it would help me forget about how I was a murderer and assassin. And I started falling more into this black hole. I ended up on the streets for 3 years as a homeless methamphetamine crack addict with this boyfriend, and nobody knew about me. My body actually started to hover like this, and my bones would stick out of my back because I was using so much drugs. And I remember one day I looked in the mirror, and I looked into my eyes, and I could only see death. And I looked at myself and I thought, who are you? What happened to you? What happened to that little princess that was so loved when she was little by her family? The little princess that was a straight A student, the little princess that had so much friends and she was popular. And one day, I got into a fight with that drug addict boyfriend, and he left me. He got into a car and he left. And I really thought that he'd come back for me. I thought that he loved me, and he never came back for me. I remember the hours rolled, and after the 4th hour, I realized I have nothing. I hit rock bottom. I have nobody. I don't have friends. I don't have my family, and I don't have anything. And I started to weep like a little girl. And I thought, what's going to become of my life? What's going to happen to my life? And I remember as I was weeping, for the first time in so many years, I felt the love of God the Father. I remember when I was little in my backyard, and I used to write love letters to God the Father, and I used to roll them up in a balloon and send them up to heaven. And I remember that I used to look up at the sky and I used to talk to him. And I hadn't looked up at the sky since then. I forgot about him. And then I looked up at the sky again after so many years. And I said, I don't know you, but I know you exist. And I don't have anything, and you're the only thing I have right now. I don't have drugs, I don't have my boyfriend, I don't have my family. And I ruined my life. And I want to ask for your forgiveness. And I want to thank you because you gave me a beautiful family, and you gave me so many blessings, and I destroyed my life. And please forgive me for all that I've done. And I put myself in a fetal position, and I started to weep, but I felt peace. And I felt a strong hug. And when I opened my eyes to see who was hugging me, in front of me, there was a young girl with blonde hair with a name tag that said Bonnie. And she said, Jesus loves you. Jesus loves you. I am a waitress at that restaurant right there. And I saw you crying, and I started to pray for you. And the Lord told me to come out here and tell you that even if your mother or father shall abandon you or forsake you, that he will always be with you until the end of time, and that he loves you and he forgives everything that you've done. And that young girl, she held me in her arms, and she lifted me off my misery, and I felt as if it were Jesus lifted me up with so much dignity, just as he did to all the women in the Bible. And that, my friends, is Jesus Christ, the King of the divine mercy. And I would like, please, that we applaud his divine mercy at this very moment. And that young girl said, I don't care where you live. If I have to drive 10 hours, if I have to drive 8 hours, I'm taking you home. Thank God, she takes me to my father's house. And I stood on my father's doorstep feeling like the biggest loser, like the trash, like I wasn't worth anything. And I remember I stood there and I had no hair, and I was like this old skeleton. And I knocked on that door, and when he opened the door, I thought he was gonna get mad at me. When he opened the door, he said, nothing's wrong, everything's okay, I love you. I threw myself at his feet and I asked him to forgive me, and it was just like the prodigal son. He said, welcome home. And then my mother looked for me after that, and she took care of me. And when I went to my mother moved back, she moved to Sacramento from Mexico. 3 years that I was lost, my mom was suffering, and she went home. She went back home to the Catholic Church, and she said, I've been on my knees praying for you for 3 years, and God did this miracle for me. If God did this miracle in my mother's life, he can easily do it in your children's life. Don't ever give up. And my mother started reading the Bible, and she says, I don't care what the world thinks of you. I don't care if you have no friends, if everybody thinks you're a drug addict and you're a loser. This is what God says about you. And you're the daughter of the Most High, and you're the princess of the King of Kings. And you're not worth your education because you were a straight A student. You're not worth your career. You're not worthy because of all the friends you had. The only reason that you are worthy is because he shed the last drop of blood for you. Many kids don't know who they are. They don't know their identity. And I never told you who you were. That's why the devil took you and he dragged you across the world. Like he does with so many youth. He drags the youth into drugs, into pornography, into addictions because they don't know their identity. Your identity is the blood of Christ, and that's who you are, period. And then I started to heal, going to confession and taking the Eucharist. But when I went to this amazing retreat called Rachel's Vineyard, that's where I once again felt like a mother. I challenge you not to be a saint, but to be a great saint. A great saint. And that's why we're here today, to mark history, to make a change in this world. God bless you, and let all the glory and all the applause be for the Almighty God. Thank you so much.
I wanted to give a shout out about the book Transfigured and about the testimony that you just heard Patricia share with you. I've known Patricia for almost a year now. This is the third time that I've seen her in person. I've read the book 2 or 3 times already. And if you think that there is potential life-changing witness here by hearing her speak, there is so much more in the book to her story than what she could share with you in just 1 hour. My dear friend Christine Watkins, right here from Queen of Peace Media. I don't know if she wants me to tell you this, but she actually spent nearly 8 years with Patricia writing the book Transfigured. 8 years. And all I can say is that it is a life-changing story to pick up a copy, take it home, share it with someone you know whose life it is going to change. And as I wrote in my own review, read Transfigured, be transfigured. Thank you. Let's go.
So the book is out, my life story. It's Transfigured, and I can talk about what it has done for people. It is like an injection of faith, and I think that many people can find a little part of their life in this book, because I tell it all. I don't hold back, and it's an explosion of healing also. Yeah, the Lord's good. It's an explosion of mercy. That's what it is. I know that one of you guys came up to me and said that you never cry at events and you felt like crying. Was that you? Yeah.
I'm kind of just always the tough one, and I was like, no, it's not hitting me. And then I saw your testimony video, and it just comes to show like how good and how all-powerful God is, and no matter what, he's always there to forgive you. So, yeah.
So the first time I heard your testimony was on ESNE. It was through ESNE El Sembrador. I think it was El Congreso de Mujeres. And it was in Spanish. And we were listening through the TV, like me and my parents were having breakfast. And we were just, I was hearing what you were saying. Like, I usually don't listen to what TV has to say. And I was just like, what? Are you serious? It's just, yeah, like you said, like his mercy. Like, you see his mercy really shine through that brokenness, and like how he's able to heal physical and spiritual wounds. It's just so overwhelming. And but like, I don't know, it's just so beautiful to even see you here and just like walk with so much grace and like confidence through him. It's just so empowering.
The bit that hit me the hardest was you talking about you actually watching an abortion, because prior I was pro-choice because that's how the culture raised us. But when I heard that they have a child die the way they kill the baby, I was like, that's not right. That's a human life, you know? And when your testimony talked about how it was a young girl that's 16 and it's just stabbing her womb, and it just hurts that happens every day. And it's like something you have to pray for, that there's that conversion for them too. Yeah.
So I cried during your whole talk. And it hit me in a way that I never thought anything would hit me. Pro-life is so important. Like, we are advocates for that, and to be reminded of that, because I forget, in all honesty, I forget sometimes that that's actually one of our callings, is to be able to stand for the voiceless. And it just put me super on fire, because I also do ministry work at Sacramento Newman, and we have a social justice, and then they want to do pro-life, and it's just like, I want to start getting involved in that ministry more now, because you are so brave and so courageous that God gave you that grace and his mercy to be able to speak about this to like hundreds and hundreds of people, and it like transforms people's lives. Because I know for a fact that mine is like completely changed. But yeah.
One of the things that really stood out to me was when you talked about like chastity as well. And so like I practice safe sex as well, so it's like I can kind of relate to you on that. And it's like all I was told growing up is just, be safe, or make sure you wrap it up, or make sure you're taken care of. And it actually took me a very heartbreaking experience to understand like there's more to this than just being safe. And like ever since then I've been working my way to be more chaste, and it's difficult, yes, but but it's something that I was wondering if you had any feedback for, or any, like, I guess you could say tips or anything like can kind of help with that.
So chastity is not easy. And sometimes we get discouraged. God doesn't focus so much on our sin. We're going to fall. We always fall. We sin about 7 times a day. He focuses on our struggle. Chastity is possible. It's completely possible with the sacraments, with the Eucharist. That's what gives us strength. So people see chastity as a negative, as a no. Like it's like a no-no. But chastity is actually a yes. It's actually a yes to true love. It's actually a yes to freedom. It's yes to peace. It's yes to happiness. Like, I could tell you from my experience, when I wasn't practicing chastity, every month I was worried, oh my gosh, am I pregnant? Am I pregnant? Do I have an STD? Okay, wait a minute. My boyfriend just broke up with me. Now he just slept with that other girl over there. And I just slept with them like 2 months ago. What's going on? It's like heartbreak after heartbreak. And I was just falling into wound after wound after wound. So when they tell you to be safe and to protect yourself, they never talk about the heart. You always end up with a broken heart every time you have, any type of intimacy before marriage. So chastity is actually... This is what chastity is. When you see the person you love and you say, I love you so much that I want your soul to go to heaven. I'm going to take care of your soul. That's how much I want you to be a saint. And it's that person telling you the same thing back. I love you so much that I want you to go to heaven. I want you to become a saint. That's true love. It's wanting the best for the other person. So chastity is a yes to true, deep love. in Christ. So this, it's a promise of trying to be pure. So I never take this off. I'm gonna give you my chastity.
Okay, now I gotta try extra.
Well, no, you should.
Oh, here, I'll hold that for you.
I went to confession one time, and he told me the fact that I'm struggling to be more pure is a sense of like that mindset of trying to be better. Because in the past, I would just give into it and not worry about like.
God is pleased with your struggle. Just say, "Help me." Just tell him to help you. Don't make promises to God. Just say, "Help me." But he's delighted in the struggle. He's so delighted when he sees you get up. That's why confession is so amazing. He knew we were gonna mess up all the time. That's why he gave us confession. Yeah.
That is such a beautiful time.